Good morning, Anna T. Brooks. Thank you for joining me. So as you know, and you've helped me on my journey already this far, around whole wellness, what that looks like, and about me, I guess, moving outside of my own barriers and, moving into this new way of life. I really wanted to just jump on and I guess have a chat about what it is you do and what your offering is and, what that looks like and I guess, how you can be of service to people. So I'll let you kind of take it away a little bit, give us a bit of an intro.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me, and so honored to have worked with you because your energy is incredible, and just seeing someone absolutely start to own how much power they actually have and how much impact they can actually have in this world is huge. Like it's what lights me up more than anything. So I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, so for me, it really comes down to, I believe that every hardworking, disciplined, strong woman deserves to embody what it is to co-create with the universe and to be able to receive all of her desires with ease. So from my background, I come from a very disciplined, very European, very high achieving background with the way that I was raised, and also being raised in society these days. There was a huge pull towards uniformity, towards being like everybody else, trying to fit in, and that it's the hard workers, the ones that are the most disciplined, that sacrifice the most, that get the furthest, except that that reality has shifted. And I've seen, and I've been in that position myself, of realizing that hard work alone is no longer getting me where I want to get to. Competing in the masculine energy with all the men out there is not actually serving me. It's not actually allowing me to tap into my true power and what I have to give and how I can actually impact the world. And it was that amazing shift to now, be in a space of not only my transformation and therefore my clients, but now seeing the world itself and the earth especially tuning her energy, and Mother Gaia actually shifting her energy from this polarity that we've been playing into for decades and for centuries to now being like, no, she's out. She's no longer supporting this polarity, and she is not going to support this hard work and this hustle and this grind anymore. We need to surrender. And for me, that was the biggest lesson, and the biggest transformation came from that, and from realizing that I had so much more to bring and so much more to offer and so much more of me to access when I wasn't limiting myself with just the push and how hard can I work and how late can I stay up and all of that. When I actually allowed myself to receive, it got so much easier. So
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely seeing that in like all of the work I'm doing with people, and what's coming up is that universal pull now of, and 2020 especially, like how it's really come to light, like we are being so called back to, meeting and greeting our soul selves and connecting with earth and, being our soul centered selves with that connection. And it's, whether you want to see it and believe it or not, that's so many of us are feeling that. But I think for a lot of people, they don't actually understand what it is that's happening for them. They can feel these shifts within themselves. They're feeling maybe a little bit frustrated, or, like there's something more, but they just can't quite put their finger on what that something is. So I guess with that in mind, what would your, through your experience and what you've been through, what would you be recommending to people who are feeling like, I'm feeling unease within myself, like there's something more, there's something shifting, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, and how do I kind of start taking the steps into what that actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question, because that's definitely been happening last few months especially. I mean, people have been what we call, I guess, awakening and feeling into this for years and years and years, but definitely because of everything that's happened in the last few months, a lot of people's timelines for this awakening and for this realization have been really shunted forward. And suddenly it's like, whoa, okay, I was not ready for this. I thought I knew how 2020 was going to go. And now suddenly everything's changed and I'm getting all these uncomfortable feelings of like, how is this going to work in my dynamics at home, with my family, with my friends? What am I actually doing here? And like, what's going on with my job and everything coming up, right? And there's going to be still people who are very resistant to this, and for them literally this transition, this awakening won't happen until it has to, until everything is dropped upon them. And that's perfect, right? We're all here on our own journeys, but the people that you're speaking to are the ones who are feeling that shift, who have realized that things are not the way they used to be, and that shield, that mask has kind of been lifted, and like, okay, there's something else going on here. There's something else within me that maybe for years I've been numbing down with, you know, just grind and hustle and just do the work and just repeat the cycle, or overeating or over drinking or over shopping or whatever, oversleeping, right? Whatever it happens to be. And suddenly it's like this mirror gets held up to us. It goes, all right, well, what now? Like, where do I even go from here? This wasn't what I planned on this year. I did not plan to change my entire, trajectory of my life. Yeah. And so what I would recommend, you know, knowing my journey and those of my clients and where it all starts, is just curiosity, is allowing yourself to just tap into what are you curious about, and then looking into that, right? As much as the space in terms of what we can look up these days with censorship is changing. There's still a lot of information available, and it's as simple as going, okay, you know what? I remember I was walking down the street the other day and I saw this sign talking about like Reiki healing or something. And I just thought it was interesting and I wanted to find out more about it. How about I go look that up? How about I scroll through YouTube? How about I go do a bit of a Google search and just allow your curiosity to guide you, because really that's where it all begins, and that's where you actually start to co-create with the universe, because you're putting an intention out there that something has caught your interest, that's caught your attention, and your attention is focusing that energy to be then drawn to you. So first you might go look at YouTube videos and learn a bit, and then you'll be, you know, in the supermarket and overhear a conversation of the lady next to you talking about the Reiki healer that she went to over the weekend, right? And the universe will start bringing what you seek to you. But following your curiosity.
These are like the little signs. That's what, you know, your intuition, how that intuition is talking to you, and these signs of, you know, your guides or whatever you want to call that, starts planting in front of you. And I guess just being open to what it is that you're seeing and hearing, and kind of not disregarding it. So I think what's come up for me a lot is about this consciousness, and like, what is consciousness and what is being conscious? And I think that's when you can start really moving into more of that consciousness, that these things then start to happen and flow, right? I think that's an awesome description. But I'd really love to know a little bit about, you know, what was that turning point for you where you kind of, well, you just knew that, you know, what's a bit more about your background of where you actually started from to kind of where you are now in your journey?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I came from a very, very disciplined, very hardworking background.
Background of work, like what were you doing work-wise?
So out of high school, I went straight into studying 2 degrees into music and psychology. I knew I was always interested in psychology. I didn't realize where that would quite be heading, but I knew I was very interested in human behavior. I'd studied it for years, and I loved watching people. I loved seeing why they operate the way they operate and who operates differently. And the music was more something that my mum really wanted me to do. So that was another whole lesson. But I went into university and, you know, got through those 2 degrees. And at the end of it, I knew that A, I didn't want to be a psychologist now that I had a psychology degree, and B, I did not want to continue with music now that I had a music degree. So I had $20,000 of HECS debt for 2 degrees that were like awesome lessons, but nothing more than that. And that was when, you know, the yo-yo of my life started. And this is where I think a lot of people are now, where they're like dipping a toe into something and not working out the way they want, not knowing where to go next, kind of coming back and forth, back and forth. And that was what got me firstly into personal training, because I developed a massive transformation in my body through my own journey in the gym and weights and everything. And therefore I wanted to share that with others. And so I kind of juggled between being a personal trainer, working for myself, loving the aspect of not having anyone to answer to, but just not able to make it really sustainable. And then I would go and get a job, and I would work in corporate, in real estate, and I would be, personal assistant to like the managers and that kind of thing, or working on reception, or working in rentals. And I would juggle. I had this most amazing boss. The last boss I've ever had and ever will have is actually the most amazing boss I've had in the world, because every time I left and said, this is it, I'm never coming back to a job again, he's like, I know, I'm still, but if you ever do, we're here. And sure enough, it took me a couple of goes. It took me a couple of times to take that leap before it stuck. And each time he took me back and, made a roll out of thin air basically for me, because I'm a hard worker, right? Because I get shit done. And it just kind of, it went in that loop, and it went in that loop. And something started to shift, especially in personal training, where I realized I was getting so frustrated with my clients, why I was giving them everything, the blueprint that they could just get totally what they want, and they just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
They just weren't showing up. They just weren't following it. I was even taking the time to figure out what will work for you, as in like what kind of eating suits you, all of that, and what they weren't doing it. And that was when it hit me, like, this isn't a physical thing. This isn't a personal trainer thing. This is a mindset thing. This goes deeper. They've got some sort of subconscious stuff going on that is not allowing them to get any further. And that started it all. That started me going.
When I connected with you, I was very much in that space of, I'm standing in my own way here. Like, here's me, here's where I want to be, but here's me. And I can feel that shift in that polarity in myself that you talk about, of just, I'm like, I just can't get out of my own way. Like, I know where I want to be, and I know what I want to do, and I know it's all within me, but yet I wasn't getting there. And I was like, really was dancing with myself, and it was frustrating. But, I was able to feel that and sense that within myself. And I guess that's when sort of you helped me with what we did. And well, I mean, that's a whole other story, because I've seen amazing results within myself since then. But yeah, so that was the shift for you, that where you went, okay, so it is more than just, we want to achieve these things in our lives, whatever it is, whether it be work, whether it be physical, whether it be actual mental things that we know that are there that are blocking us, so that you're like, okay, we can, like, and you started to delve into that. So once you kind of realize that, I mean, I guess your psychology training would still have allowed you, like, it gives you a massive insight. So, once that all kind of dropped in for you, what did it look like from there? What started to open up and happen for you from that point?
It was a slow journey. There was a lot of me figuring out really, where is my place in the world? Where do I sit? And not in terms of actually finding myself within anything else, but just within me, and not trying to fit in anymore into a box and trying to be like this person, or I'm going to be like this coach, or I'm going to do this kind of thing. And especially with my clients, the ones that I began to realize that there was clients that I could give the exact same method, the exact same everything to, and they would both do it, and they would actually both commit to it, but only one of them would get the results. And that was when it started to hit me that there is something that goes deeper than this. I can't continue to teach and preach that, if you just commit yourself and you do the work and you show up and you just do it, you're going to get the results. Because here I had proof after proof that no, there were people just like me who were showing up, who were training every day, who were following everything. Obviously, I understand that I can't see everything in their lives, but my intuition felt that I trusted them when they said this. And I could see the disappointment in their eyes, and I could see how much it hurt them when they gave their everything and they didn't get anywhere close to the results they wanted. And that really started to then just go, okay, I'm not meant to be doing personal training. I'm meant to be going deeper, because why otherwise does this keep coming up for me? And then it was, honestly, it had to start with my own healing, because until I got out of those habits, the only reason I was attracting it was because I was doing the same thing. I was, getting up at ridiculous o'clock. I was working out. I was pushing myself. I wasn't giving myself rest. I come from it, like that whole time in uni, I was also binge eating and exercise anorexia. So I would go and binge, but then I would go work out for 5 hours. And so it was just that constant, like, overdoing everything.
That comes,
and I realized
self-love, like that's what I'm hearing in that. It was that lack of self-love. And this is also a message that's coming really like through for me, for everyone, is, what is self-love and what does that look like? Because we hear that word preached to us, but I don't necessarily understand, well, I didn't for a long time understand what self-love actually meant. What I think, you're in this state, you're starting to see, well, I actually wasn't really giving myself a lot of love. I wasn't listening into what my body was telling me. I was just pushing myself to every nth degree because that's what society told me to do. Yeah. So, okay. So once you kind of got through, that, and you started to realize that was, I guess, the journey that you were going on, how did you go from sort of that space to now creating, I guess, what your offering is? And maybe if you can explain a little bit about what your actual offering is, what it is that you offer people, and how you help them really kind of move forward in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I moved through, obviously, from just mindset coaching, things like affirmations and journaling and shifting your beliefs and everything, to gradually looking more towards intuitive. And I would realize that when I was speaking with someone, I didn't need them to explain what was going on for them. I already knew what was going on. I may not know the details, I may not know the names or whatever, because I'm not that kind of psychic, or at least we all are, but I don't tune into that side of me because it's not of importance to me. But I could feel straight away what their block is, what their resistance is, what is actually within them that's that sticking point. And I just started trialing it, to be honest. When you first start out, you're not really sure if, especially when you start to tap into your intuition, you second guess yourself a lot. You think, this can't be real, I'm making shit up. Everyone's just going to think I'm stupid.
I'm plucking stuff out of thin air and hoping for the best, but we're actually not. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're actually just plucking things out of the quantum field, which is everything, right? We have access to everything all at once within us and all around us at all times. So
big brain in itself.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Oh, I have the infinite within me, infinite possibilities, infinite answers. Like that's all dropping in for me now. And, I actually have been saying to people, I feel smarter. Like, I don't know how, but I feel smarter. Like, just stuff is popping into my head that was blocked before, So it's not necessarily that I'm smart. I think I've always had this ability within me, and I've always had the resources. But I was standing my own way, and I was blocking those things dropping in. And I'm not thinking about the things that drop in, and I just hear it and I say it, and it's bang on. And it's for all aspects of my life. It's not just when I'm helping people. It's for, knowing when it's the right step to make with somebody, or to invest in this thing, or just like a trivia question, and it just pops into my head and I'm like, oh, what do you know? So it's incredible. So continue. Sorry, I get all excited when it all makes sense now.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. And it's a trust thing, right? Like it's dropping into that level of trust and that level of surrender, that there's something greater than what you've been taught to see with your eyes. And we need to sometimes close our eyes and, go into meditation. And that's another thing, is just teaching people what meditation is and what it isn't, because there's so many, misconceptions about, I can't meditate because I can't do this and all that kind of stuff. And dropping into that trust that there is something more available. And that's, really what I work with my clients on, through processes of going through and really breaking down, first of all, their patterns. Patterns are, I love to still, decipher things and see history and see what keeps coming up, because there's a reason it keeps coming up.
Yep.
We keep taking the same actions, but we also keep operating from the same beliefs.
Yep.
And seeing that, we can start to shift that. But also it's, like the sessions that we've had is the activations. And this is something that's only really come through me in the last maybe 8-9 months. Before this, it was purely kind of coaching and everything. And these activations started coming through me at the end of last year after a beautiful session with one of my coaches, right? Because that's the whole thing, is constantly evolving, constantly unlocking these things. And after this session with her, something just shifted. And I stopped doing any kind of business coaching, because I used to do online business coaching. And I just went, no, this is not what I'm meant to do. I need to actually step into activations and coaching. Yeah, absolutely, still, and helping people through things.
For someone that might not know what an activation is, can you explain a little bit about what might happen in an activation and what that might look like?
Yeah. So one of the, I guess the most common one that I do is the quantum energy activation. And this is, it's well, using the word quantum, for those who don't know, is basically meaning that there is infinite availability to us at all times. Time is not linear. It's not, it's going to take me 6 months to get to this goal or whatever it is. That's just a construct we have here on Earth. However, time is completely non-linear, and we can fold time, we can bend time, we can extend time, we can make time shorter. And if you don't know exactly what that means, think of a time when you've been bored out of your brain and think how long a minute feels when you just want it to be over. And then think about a time that you were so just overjoyed spending time with someone, and you like 5 hours passed and you thought you'd been there for 10 seconds. Yeah. That's what I meant. That is you actually bending time, and that is you actually expanding and contracting it depending on your being, right, on where you are from. Yeah. But we don't get taught that. We just kind of look back on it and go, oh yeah, right, I do remember that. But this is something we have at our disposal at all times. And so the quantum energy activation is a process by which we identify, firstly, what is your main number one goal. It does focus on a specific goal. And then as we begin it, we actually get you to firstly really get into the feeling of that goal. We allow the resistance to come through. So there's other techniques that I use as well, from like EFT tapping to chakras and meridians and energy and everything. And we start to work out what is the resistance that is there and to release that. And we do that through a process of actually releasing, surrendering this to Mother Earth and allowing her to heal it, because we are so deeply connected to all of her power, all of Mother Earth and the crystals and the energy that she has, that she can take care of this for us. We don't even need to be doing all of this healing. We think that, we need to go to doctors and we need to go to all these different therapists for years and years and years because they're going to fix something. We can just hand it over. We can. And through that process, we actually release it. It gets transmuted. It gets alchemized and changed into our power. So this thing that we've been carrying around with us for so long, that's been this cause of pain and this cause of so many issues, becomes your power. Your pain to your power, your mess into your message, right? All of those kind of sayings is where that comes from.
That whole that mess into your message is like, that's all part of our life's learning. And until we learn that mess, we can't move through it, which then becomes our message, because once we've experienced something and we're able to shift through it and realize and have that connection with, and it's that all of a sudden, because when you're in that consciousness, you have awareness. So once you now have awareness of, you can't be unaware of what you're aware of. Once you're aware of it, you're then able to change it. And like, that's sort of what I'm starting to learn the more and more and more I'm doing this, is it's all about awareness. The more aware we are of our thoughts and our feelings and what's coming up for us in every sort of moment of life, then we become more aware of how then we react. And, the more awareness you have, it just grows and expands, and you just have so much more control over your life and, creating more of what you want and less of what you don't want, because you're aware of what messages you're putting out there to the universe and the world, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was an exercise that I think I gave you as well after either the first or the second session, where I think it was actually the first one, where I just said, get a journal, and from now on, just write down anything that stands out to you as you go about your day. If a particular bird lands close to you, or you're walking down the street and some color just stands out to you, or some word or something, or a song comes on that you're just like, whoa, I haven't heard this song in years. Just note it down, right? And that's that awareness that you're speaking of, that it's our intuition switching on and allowing itself to come through. But if we ignore it, we miss all of it. And it doesn't mean that we're going to know exactly what the message is every single time, every time it happens. But the more we can just at least note it, that's when you look back in a month's time and you're like, oh my God, that color is then that top that I found that I absolutely fell in love with. And now I wear it everywhere. And, that song, that was that message that I had about my relationship, that it was this going through this phase of this relationship. And sometimes we need that kind of time before the message actually comes through. But it's amazing to then start to see how all of this was actually coming into our awareness all along. And then we get better and better at it, right? It is a practice thing. Like, you can't just expect to one day be like, oh, now I'm all tapped in and tuned in and I'm going to know exactly when a message comes through. You have to practice it. It's like any other thing, any other lesson, any other skill. It gets practice.
Yeah. But it is amazing the resistance that comes up around, like, okay, I'm going to allow this time every day to meditate. And I'm still not quite there with my practice. It's not every day, but I generally meditate every day. It just is a matter of when. I'm trying to work on a particular time. But it is just a story that I'm creating around why it's not possible right now, and I'm aware of that. So, but it is interesting, the resistance, and like I'm seeing like the people around me, how resistance is coming up. And when we know we're about to do some big work and we lock ourselves into stuff like this, which is what I find most interesting, the resistance I feel inside myself of like, oh, I have a headache, or I don't feel well, or there's these stories and these resistance that start popping up. And, once we're in it and I'm like, oh, this is happening, that's happening. And it's like, that's just your body resisting the change, because, we're safe in what we know. And so when we're going to then move outside of what our body knows and deems as safe, it starts to go into this like panic stations. But then once you move through it, it's like, yeah, that was all right. And it's like your body starts to then like recalibrate and move into that. So maybe you can touch on as well, like, I think with all of this stuff that I've done, like there is a level of like recalibrating that you kind of go through. Can you possibly explain what that kind of can look like for people? Because I think it varies every time depending on the work you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it varies on the person and the goals, obviously. So going back to, like, for example, the quantum energy activation. So I've had people who've had, certain goals in business, for example, and for them, afterwards, it's meant that they've got this renewed motivation and this inspiration that starts coming through for things that before we'd already talked about. They'd already got coaching on it. They already knew the things they had to do, but they just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh my God, why have I been waiting on this? And they want to do it and they're inspired to do it.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is a beautiful client of mine who one of the parts of the activation is we actually go through the location of your pain. So where it is that you feel it in your body, because that's how we actually start to release it. And her pain was all in her shoulder, in one shoulder. I can't remember if it's the left or right, I've forgotten now. And she'd had it for about a decade, this pain. And after we went through the full activation and released it and everything, she messaged me the next day and she's like, Anna, that pain's gone.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, okay, wow. And sure enough, it's been like 6 months later now and it's still gone. It has not come back for her. And that, just kind of reiterates of how powerful we are in terms of the emotions we hold, in terms of the pain that we hold, especially in ourselves. Because yes, we're consciousness, yes, we're energy, but we are here in a physical vessel. That's how we are here on earth. We are still in the 3D. And if we hold that pain within this body, it's not going to work properly. And so that's amazing kind of results, obviously, for people who feel big shifts and they get amazingly motivated, they get inspired, they take action, pain is healed, all that kind of stuff. But on the other extreme as well, not so much extreme, I haven't really had any extreme ones, but depending on the activation, not so much with this one, but with different ones where we really dig into releasing layers of ourselves that we've taken on through our lifetime. So this is the naked soul activation, and it strips us back to our core. So it's actually taking away parts of ourselves that we've put on during our life that aren't ours, that they're, by our parents
or whatever, just that we've attached as our own because that's what our parents said or our teachers said or a friend said.
Yeah, exactly. So because that activation itself is so much about literally taking parts of you away, it's like almost like depleting you in some ways. That's usually after that kind of activation, people will tend to feel tired for a few days. They'll need to drink a lot of water. They'll feel empty, right? Because they're literally at this point where they now get to fill their cup with all the things that they want. But before they can do that, they need to sit with their core. They need to sit with who they are, naked soul, without all of the stuff we've put on ourselves. And that can be uncomfortable. And especially for the body, with all these things that have been released, like it's suddenly like, I don't have this pain here, but I don't have anything here. And I'm just kind of feeling drained, right? Because that's literally what's happened, is all this stuff has been drained out of you. So there's obviously different activations for different things. But the magic of that one especially is because once you've gotten through that, once you've given yourself those days, or it could be a week or whatever, to just recharge, heal, really be very gentle on yourself, then you can start to, once again, start plucking from the quantum field and go, okay, cool. Well, you know what? I want this part of myself. I want to own this part. I want to now own my confidence and whatever it is. And you get to start to rebuild from where you actually want, rather than from, when you were 5 years old and your mum told you you're not smart or whatever, things that were put upon you, you now as an adult get to choose instead.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think energy work's a really hard one to kind of wrap your head around, because from an intellectual perspective, it's like that's all just absolute BS, and the ego really steps in and is like, no, that's bullshit, you're wasting your money and it doesn't really happen. But the more you kind of just step into what that feeling around it is, and like I found this for myself with finding different people along the way, like it's never ending and completely totally evolving, and it's more just been, okay, what actually feels right for me right now, and it's just the question. So what I've learned just over the weekend, I did another course, is all about being in the question always, for yourself and for other people. If you're always in the question of, is this mine? Does this belong to me? Is this what I need to do? Whatever it is, and wherever you are, when you're in the question, always in the question, you're then really, I feel like, sinking in and dropping into that true beingness of me and I, or being. And that allows like things to drop in for you. So and that lightness and heaviness too, like when something is supposed to be, like if you feel lightness around that, whatever it is, whatever the question is or the decision you need to make, if you feel lightness in that, then it's like a real definite yes. And then if you feel that sort of heaviness around whatever it is you're trying to decide on, that's sort of like a no. So I guess, the way I think, I don't even know how I connected with you originally. I can't even remember. But I know over the period of time, like, sometimes I'll be stuck in a question of not sure where I'm going. And that's where, you would kind of connect in with me, and I'd get you to give me a bit of guidance around that. So what do you do there? Like, what's your modality, I suppose, of tuning into a specific question or desire or whatever to get an answer for something, if someone's just looking for that extra little bit of clarity? And I think it just helps build the trust as well between a relationship between you and I, because I don't know that I would have stepped directly into doing the quantum leap work and my core belief stuff with you had I potentially not touched base with you initially a couple of times first, because that kind of gave me the confidence in, oh, actually really you were kind of getting me and my energy. But yeah, just for people that this is really new for, can you just explain a little bit about how that might look for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's very common. Funnily enough, though, that's not as common for me as it is probably for a lot of other people. I tend to, when my clients come to work with me, most of them have never worked with me before. They've watched for a while and then they're just like, that's it, got to go all in.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Well, messaging is very clear though, so I think that certainly helps. But, you know, for someone like me, as I'm, you know, there was so much of that block of me standing in my own way and letting, you know, that fight between ego and myself and my conscious self and wanting to evolve, that sometimes I just need a little bit of reassurance that, you know, yes, what I'm feeling is right and validated. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people on that journey, but yeah, you're very congruent with your messaging. So, you know, I think you speak to a lot of people very clearly, but then there are some people who are very new on this journey, so might be a little bit more skeptical to what
that trust again, isn't it? So it's, you know, the people that are still learning to trust themselves, learning that this is okay, that they can actually lean into this. That's where I know for a lot of them, they begin with like maybe every week or two, depending what I'm doing, I'll do like a card pull where I will, you know, maybe do 1 or 2 or 3 cards into like particular decks, and I'll put it up on my Facebook and, you know, say, just take a moment, breathe in, center yourself, just close your eyes and then see which deck pulls to you. And then I'll put the reveal up later of the cards and what they mean. And these are oracle cards that I use. And for a lot of people, that's kind of where they first came across me, because they were like, oh, like I didn't even, like you weren't even pulling for me specifically, but this really resonates. And then they might jump onto one of my live streams where, you know, once in a while I'll pull a card for people individually and kind of expand upon it, and same thing, then they'll get that and it'll be like an individual card and they'll just go, whoa, like that's spot on. That's exactly what's going on. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And it develops, obviously the trust with me that, yeah, I'm actually here, you know, doing what I do. But more importantly, the trust of the person who's receiving it, to actually realize that I'm putting my energy into this. I'm allowing this. I'm connecting with this. There's something more here. I can trust myself to ask for this kind of support. And then, you know, then they very often end up getting like a 3-card reading or like an in-depth reading or something which goes deeper and deeper into these things. And that's you know, that can definitely evolve that way, but that's a beautiful way to do it, because like I said, it develops the trust with the person that's actually doing the readings and who's actually tuning in for you, but it also develops your own trust in yourself that this is okay, I can do this, I can look into this. And especially when you start to get readings where you're like, oh, I knew that. Like that's exactly what I knew, and you just told me exactly what I already know.
Yeah, that's what happened to me in the last few years. Was like when I first got readings, when I was first, you know, dabbling with it, it was all like, you know, oh, wow, this is all new to me. But now I find that when I have these readings, it's never telling me anything that I don't already intuitively know within myself or where I'm going. It's validation. So, I mean, I don't even seek out readings very often anymore, because I'm so in tune with myself. I've got my own cards. If there's a really big decision, sometimes I just need that outside perspective just to kind of help me navigate it a little bit more. But generally speaking, like now it's just that validation, and sometimes that's all we need. Like when we need to make a really big decision in our lives that we're feeling really torn between, having that external person that is able to really tune into that energy and just say a few things that you're like, I mean, I've had people over the years go, did I say that to you? Or are you in my head? Because it's like so spot on, because I've just tuned into their energy. And that's really all it is just, you know, tuning into someone's energy and feeling what it is for them, and, you know, being able to decipher what might be going on for them. And it's not a place of judgment. It's not a place of, you know, this is what you should or shouldn't do. It's simply a perspective on your options and choices, because I think this sort of stuff, it scares people a little bit, because they're like, you know, it's not about predicting your future. You have choices. You have infinite ability of choices. And, you know, whatever's happening for you right here, right now, if you choose to go down a different direction, that's going to change the course of your life. So, you know, I think that's what I find so empowering about all of this sort of stuff, is that the choice is always mine, and where I want my life to go is always mine, and we are the co-creators of our life. And, you know, I know sometimes when people are in that really hard spot or sticky spot in their life, they're, you know, battling some sort of illness, or, you know, bad things are happening, and there's that question of, why has this happened to me? As hard as it is, it's always coming back to that question of, you know, what did I have to learn from this, and what was the message here, and how can I, you know, evolve and grow from here? And sometimes we don't actually understand it, and it can be so painful, but I've seen through the greatest pains is the greatest growth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that thing as well around like fault and responsibility. Like, it's not your fault your parents abused you, but it's definitely your responsibility if you want to heal from it and you want to empower yourself to be different and to change that moving forward. It's not your fault your partner cheated on you and ruined the relationship, but it's definitely your responsibility moving into the next relationship if you don't want to take that pain and just repeat it, right? It's that fault and responsibility. And unfortunately, sometimes those who are at fault are not going to take the responsibility. But staying in that state of always like, well, it's somebody else's fault because this happened and this, it completely puts you in a place of disempowerment where you can't take responsibility, you can't change anything because it's all somebody else's responsibility, when really, no, it may be their fault, but it's your responsibility.
Yeah. And I think that's life lessons of, you know, our choice again, and feeling into, like, so many people identify with that victim mentality of, you know, having this story that they live their life by, and, well, I can't have all of this happiness and all of this joy because of the circumstances of my life and this story that I continue to live in. And I think what's becoming more and more apparent for me is the more you can center yourself in meditation and, you know, be more at one with yourself, and really start to feel the joy. Like, I've noticed myself smiling through meditation now. Like, I feel this overwhelming sense of joy. My, like, you know, my heart chakra is so open, and I'm in such a state of receiving, that when you're in a space of joy and happiness and gratitude, you can't be anything other than feeling grateful for all of these lessons that you've been taught to this point. And, like, you know, yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson, you know, like, things have happened to all of us. Everyone's been through stuff. We've all been hurt. We've all experienced pain to varying degrees. And it's just how you then choose to continue to show up and, you know, I guess take that lesson from that and, you know, really come from that place of joy and gratitude. Because when you're in a space of joy and gratitude, really, like, life starts to happen for you. And it's just moving outside of the head, I think, and into that infinite space of possibilities. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Pretty powerful stuff. Is there anything else that you feel like pulled to share with people that might be, you know, wanting to walk down this journey and, you know, really take life by the horns?
Yeah, just back to curiosity. That's literally it. Just start. Just let yourself lean into what you're curious about. You know, if you want to learn more about what I do, go find me on Facebook, go jump into my free group, Leaders Not Lemmings, and, you know, go and just have a listen and check some things out in there and start leaning in and just seeing where the journey takes you, you know, because, yeah, really that's where it starts for everyone. Like, if I can be really honest with every single person that I've worked with, in terms of clients, in terms of business people, in terms of anything, it's just curiosity. It started with just their curiosity about something different, and then they just looked into it. But also, touching back on what you said with the power of choice, and to realize that we get to choose if we want things to be different. And it's as simple as making the choice that from now on, I'm going to choose a new direction. I'm going to make choices based on what I want and not what I don't want. And simple little things like that then just go, you know, you get tired and you get home from work or whatever, and you have the choice of switching on the telly, or, you know, going and actually reading a book or something, or going and actually sitting down for 10 minutes and meditating. You make the choice. You ask yourself, am I choosing the same stuff? Am I going to choose to just repeat where I've been the last, you know, 10, 20, 30, whatever years? Or am I going to choose something different? And to realize that you have that in every single moment. We think of, like, alternate realities as this big thing that happens in sci-fi movies or whatever. We don't realize that we create alternate realities hundreds of times a day. When you decide to walk down that street and not that street, when you decide to go out with friends that night or you don't, when you decide to switch on the telly or you decide to read the book. You are literally splitting yourself and creating alternate realities of who you are. And it can be a very, very simple decision. So don't think that it has to be
don't know about
huge.
anyone else. My brain just exploded. I mean, it is so simple. It is so simple. And yet we overcomplicate. Us humans overcomplicate every process there is. And it is not that complicated. Meditation isn't as complicated as we make it up in our heads to be. And being isn't as complicated. And, living a life of joy isn't as complicated. Like, some moments are harder to feel joyful than others. But you are choosing. And I mean, this is a lesson I keep having and a conversation I keep having with my daughter. I'm like this and this and that. And she's got this whole big story around how she's feeling. I'm like, well, you're choosing to feel that way right now. You can choose to have a different perspective and a different outcome. And, it's your choice. So I'm trying to instill that in her. It's a battle and it's a fight, but I know one day she'll get it. And when she chooses to react a different way, and that's what I'm sort of trying to teach her, is that, well, when you act this way, you're not going to get a desired result from people or life because it doesn't feel good. But when you act this way, people are going to be more inclined to want to move towards you because it feels good for them as well as for yourself. So, it's, and that's just life in general, but how can we instill and teach this to the younger people around what that sort of looks like and, creating that life that you so badly want and desire. And I mean, I think somewhere deep inside me, I always knew that I had infinite impossibilities, and that I could have whatever I wanted. And society is so quick to tell you, you can't do that, or you won't be able to do that, or you won't succeed, or you don't have the degrees. And, there was a lot of I couldn't, but I'm the type of person that you can tell me as much as you like that I can't and I won't, and I'm going to prove you wrong. You just watch me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've worked with, I don't have children myself, so that's something that I'm always very honest about, that I don't sit on my high horse and preach about how you should raise your children or something. However, what I do love is that the clients that I work with, a lot of them do have children. And that is something that they go through where they're like, well, I'm going through this transformation. I'm going through this shift. How in the world do I get these, anywhere from 3 years old to 13 and 16 years old kids on board with this? And it comes back to you. It comes back to, when are you going to do this yourself? Because whatever age they are, they will A, watch what you do, and B, they will be in that energy, right? And you have more power to impact them by your decisions than you realize. And this one beautiful client that I worked with, her children used to, jump all over her first thing in the morning. She wouldn't have a moment to herself. They'd be like, Mom, I want to do this. Mom, do this, do this. And when she came to me, she was like, I know I need to meditate. I know I need to do my gratitude work. I know I need to connect with myself.
Yeah.
And I can't. And I'm like, well, what if you just decided you're going to? And your kids are just going to have to get on board. And it took her, a week or two of just saying, no, Mummy is unavailable for the first 20 minutes or whatever. And you know what happened? The youngest daughter, she got curious about what Mummy's doing. She's like, but what are you doing in this time that's on your own? And she'd come and have a look, and she'd watch her, writing out her gratitude and then her meditation. And then she would see that she would go and get a cup of tea or something. And then a week later, her daughter ran into the room at the time that, my client was going to start her session, and she had the cup of tea for her mum. And she's like, Mum, here's your cup of tea. I know you need to do your journaling. When you do the gratitude, can I sit with you and can I write out my own gratitudes? And this stuff shifts because they watch, they see how you feel, they see you stand in your power. And then they want to join in. Why wouldn't they, right? Especially as kids, we try on so many different things. We try on so many different personas, so many different, make-believe is where we live. So why wouldn't we want to make-believe with Mum over here who's imagining, the growing business that she's made and all the money and what they're spending it on? Of course they're going to want to jump into that and play with that as well. And it's actually easier with kids because you don't have to teach them that imagination is fake.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's a great one. I never considered to allow my children to be a part of this experience with me. I mean, I'm feeling and seeing how I'm shifting and how I'm then showing up and responding to them. and like my daughter's like, no, I don't want to meditate, I don't like meditating. Like she has resistance around it. But I think if I make her more involved, like that's a really good one, you know, get her to help me with my journaling and what does gratitude look like and what are we thankful for, and you know, start doing that together. And they do generally feed into that. So that is a fantastic one for the stories around why we can't have this time in the morning. And you know, it really is just making it prerequisite and putting it out there to the world and the children. And you know, you can either join me and be quiet and that's what we need, or you know, you go and do your thing, and when we do our gratitude, you come back and join me and be a part of that as well. And it's their choice then too, to how they decide to show up in the world too, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I've really enjoyed this chat with you. Thank you so much for spending some time and, you know, sharing all of your wisdom. Yeah, I really just wanted everyone to kind of get a feel for all of these amazingness that I know is available to them, you know, and start introducing to people, you know, these sorts of modalities to people that, you know, they might not necessarily know what they look like, and how they really can create the life of their dreams and desires. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately the reason we started this is because I'm the vision for the platform of Hair on the Move. So this is going to be called the Reflect Your Inner Beauty TV, because, you know, reflecting your inner beauty for me is all about what comes from the inside, and you know, how we can impact all of that. So that's why I asked you to join us, because I've seen firsthand the impact that you can have. So I really am so grateful and honored that you have, you know, shared all of this with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, so excited to see this grow and to see this thrive, and just, yeah, help as many people as possible to, yeah, like you said, just be able to, you know, feel into themselves and feel into that self-love and everything that they are capable of. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Anna.